Hello, welcome to our beautiful capital city of Czech Republic, and let's together visit the Prague's branch of GuideVision. Hello, and Radek, welcome. You're the CEO of the GuideVision. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation.
Let's talk about the company. And of course, at first we have to ask about the motto. Every company has one, and you also have one, which is bringing life into your enterprise services. Sounds great, but what does it mean? How can you explain for me as a person who doesn't know anything about the company?
That tells us something about the motto, because it was supposed to mean something relatively easily, but you're right, it may not be straightforward. The meaning is relatively simple. We want our customers, and our customers are not just the companies, but also the users, the people in the company doing their daily job, to make sure that their lives are easier in terms of using their systems, right? We implement a system for them, and last thing we want is that it's a nuisance to them, it's an extra hassle. It should be the other way around. It should make their work life easier. And that way, actually, we are bringing life there, because suddenly, they can start enjoying their life because it's easy to do their job. So that's the idea behind. Maybe it should be more straightforward.
No, I think it's great, but of course, sometimes you need a bigger explanation. What about visions in the future? What does the company have?
Right.
Do you have some, of course?
Yes. I'll start from the past a little bit, because the vision is an extrapolation of the past somehow. The company has been growing really, really, really fast and was very successful in the last years. And we definitely want to continue on that journey. So definitely growth is the mantra here. But the question is, where do you want to grow, or why do you want to grow, or what's the point of growing? And the vision is that we want to be really one of the top, maybe top 2, top 3 ServiceNow partners in Europe. We are kind of leading ServiceNow partner in Central and Eastern Europe, which is where the company started years ago. But now this market has become too small for us. So we are expanding more into the western part of Europe, specifically for the German-speaking countries, like so-called DACH region, and the Nordic countries, specifically Finland and Sweden. And that's where we really want to become, not maybe just in terms of the numbers, that you can measure number of people or the revenue or whatever, but also in terms of how people perceive us. If they think about, we will do certain things with ServiceNow, implement some new workflows, we have new business processes, who would we talk to or contact? Well, maybe GuideVision, because GuideVision is one of the top. We know the top 2, 3 names. So that's our vision, where we would like to be maybe in 2, 3, 4 years from now. Not 10, definitely. This is more like few years only.
You're saying you're becoming the best. So can you say what is the strength of the company? What do you feel like the CEO feels? Yeah, this is something that we are really good at.
Right. The team. And more specifically, the knowledge, the experience that the team has. Compared to the competitors, I think I can say quite at ease, I can be at ease with that our people have a certain edge over many others, certain level of knowledge that is difficult to find on the market. Really experts in their areas, given by either the education that, we invest a lot into the education of the people, of ourselves, and also the experience, because we had the luck of being able to run many interesting and various projects. So people have accumulated a lot of experience over the years. So this is our strength. And actually what is behind this is really this training system that we have implemented in the past. It really helps us not only be there, but evolve this even further in the future, because we have to constantly work on this, constantly keep improving. We must not stay complacent, otherwise someone else will immediately take the lead.
So you're learning on the way. And maybe on the other side, do you have any weakness you need to work on? Of course, nothing that someone can use against you now, but do you know about some?
Many.
Yes?
Many weaknesses. Some I will probably keep for myself. But one that is really obvious is that we are all technicians. We are all people with more or less quite thorough technical knowledge, experience, and everything. We are not so good in actually selling that knowledge, selling that experience, selling those capabilities. So we are bad salesmen, great technical guys that can then deliver really to the satisfaction of the customer. So that's one of our weaknesses. The other weakness that I would mention is probably the fact I mentioned the growth of the company. That's on one hand something that looks nice, People like talking about it, or the owners may be happy about it because it means more money in the end. But actually, it also goes hand in hand with constant, let's say, I call it a game of catch-up. What I mean by that is that we grow to a certain size, and that means we need to introduce certain processes. We can no longer manage things but just talking to each other in the kitchen, for example, because the colleague may not be in the same kitchen because he's in a different country. And therefore, you introduce a process. Once you've introduced a process, it takes some time to implement that process. In the meantime, the company keeps growing. So when the process is finally in place and people know it and follow it, you realize it doesn't fit the size and complexity of the company anymore. So you need to catch up and improve that process, or implement a new process or new tool or new best practice or whatever. So we constantly keep this catch-up game, and it's sort of a weakness unless you can manage it well. And I think we can still learn how to manage it better than today.
Okay, you've been talking about working with the different people and different projects. Maybe could you describe what is a typical customer for you? I know it's hard, but do you have something like that?
Usually, in simple terms, these are large enterprises, large corporations. For various reasons, what we do is about digitizing business processes in companies. Small companies don't have a need for that, or the need is not that big. Plus, they probably don't have large enough budgets to implement ServiceNow, which is quite an expensive system. So typically these large corporations, but it's not the only aspect. The other thing is that you have, and we had cases like that in the past as well, you have a large company that does have that need. We would actually be probably well positioned to help them and implement some improvements there. But there is a lack of maturity on their side. What I mean lack of maturity is that they need to come to realization, okay, we need to standardize things, we need to introduce some processes, we want to really make sure these are run digitally, not on paper, they're efficient, they're automated, etc., etc. Sometimes companies are not ready for that because maybe the people are not ready for that, or the company culture is not ready for that, or there might be other reasons. Those are then customers that would struggle with us and we would struggle with them. So these are, let's say, not typical customers. So typical customer would be in short expression, a mature, let's say, relatively large organization or enterprise.
Okay. Now, from some other point of view to the company, because you're working within Infosys, what is the position there? Can you describe the relationship? Are you working closely together, or are you more or less independent?
Mm-hmm. Both. We do both. On one hand, we are working very closely together in getting new business, in generating new business, in business development, because that's our weakness I mentioned before. And that was actually the reason why the owners of GuideVision decided to just merge with Infosys and sell the company to Infosys, because Infosys is very good in that. They have great sales team, and they have connections all around the world to these large, mature enterprises, and they can really get us introduced there. So business development is something where we work very closely with, and we sort of rely on them quite heavily. And then it comes to the actual delivery, the implementation, and that's where our strengths come in, because that's what we are really, really good at, much better than the mother company, than Infosys. So once we make that sell, then we come and deliver on that. And this is how we work together. So on the delivery part, we do maintain strong independence. We do things our own way, using our own methods, our own tools, our own best practices. We decide how we promote people, how we educate people, who we hire or not. It's all 100% independent GuideVision decision, because we know how to do that, and Infosys recognizes that. And I really like this. It's a nice kind of a symbiotic relationship that we have, because we are trying to leverage the strengths of both partners. And so far, knock knock, it's been working well.
You've been talking about GuideVision being around Europe. So how many branches do you right now have, and where are they located? 6,
if I'm not counting badly. So Czech Republic, here, this is the headquarters, this is where it all started. And the second one was Hungary, that was founded shortly after, Poland. And then we have branches in Finland, Germany, and Sweden. Sweden is the most recent one. That's the one we've established less than a year ago. It started June 2022. And we already have a great team there, and we already run some interesting projects, and we have just acquired, I would say, very promising customers. So that's been running really, really well. And so these 6 countries, and you can see there is like 2 types of branches, let's say. One type is from where the delivery comes, from where most of the people actually implement the project, and that's the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. Mm-hmm. And then the ones that are more customer-facing, where we need to be close to the customer, understand their local culture, ideally even speak the local language, understand the market, understand who the competition is, etc., win the business, bring the business, and then together with the people from Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary, deliver on that. And those are the 3, like in Finland, Sweden, and Germany.
Because it's hard to work with people around the world because they're all different, right? So you need to always have the people in the country to understand it.
Yes, from that perspective, yes. So for that, we need the diversity. We really need different people in different countries to understand like the best what the customer or the market demands or expects. I can tell you like a usual or average, Czech colleague here may struggle when talking to a customer in Germany, for example. There is a different expectation. We are learning. We are trying to learn as much about that as possible to be more successful in those interactions. From the company point of view, we are trying to generate even more diversity. So we even have people outside of these branches. We have like one colleague living in Belgium, for example. We have colleagues from other countries as well. So we do not focus just on recruiting or hiring in these places, because the more diversity we have, on one hand it's a little bit of a complication maybe, but on the other hand it's actually making us much stronger than we are today, because people are bringing sometimes surprising perspectives that are always beneficial. So depends on how you look at it, but I think it's more a benefit than a disadvantage. Having as many people from as many different cultures, places, languages, histories as possible.
They can also teach you a lot, so yes. I think it's good. You've been talking about 6 branches in Europe. Sweden is the latest one, or the newest one, I mean. Are you now planning on making a new branch somewhere around the Europe, or maybe in the future outside of the Europe? Because Infosys, as you said, has contacts around the world. So
yes. This is a topic which is constantly on my table, or on the table of, let's say, some of the board meetings that we have. Because every now and then we ask exactly the same question. What if we set up a branch somewhere? I can tell you like 2 years ago, it was like US. Let's set up a branch in US. And we didn't do it. Then we even had 4 or 5 years ago, a branch in Italy that existed for a while, and we no longer have that. So this is a constantly ongoing discussion. There is always search for opportunities and questions. Do we need a branch for that or not? Because you may do business in the country without a branch, right? You don't need a branch all the time. The one which is currently on the table is having some offshore center, or we can call it a branch as well, most likely with Infosys in India, but not like we would just take people from our colleagues in Infosys and just say, you guys now join us on the project, because that wouldn't match, that wouldn't work. They have different methodologies, different approaches, different tools, different systems, everything. So you want to find our own people, run them, push them through our education system, make them GuideVisionaires, which is what we sometimes call ourselves. So little GuideVisionaires, green people in India working for us. And the reasons are multiple, but of course, cost is one aspect, which especially nowadays, given what is happening globally with the economic climate, may be quite needed. So that's one, but that's not the only or the main driver. The other is the diversity. I mean, there are many things that people, not just in India, in Asia, and I have spent a lot of time actually working in Asia, are much better at than we are. They are sort of much more flexible than we are. They are very hardworking, very fast learners. So that's definitely a reason to get some people like that. It's also a time zone, because we have sometimes customers that are just in a completely different time zones to ours. Difficult to work with someone, in Australia from Czech Republic or Hungary, right? While if you have someone who is a bit closer somewhere over there in Asia, still India is quite far from Austria, but anyway, it can make it much easier. So time zone is another very important aspect. So I would say these 3 are probably the main reasons why we are now thinking about setting up our own GuideVision branch somewhere in India.
Okay, so if I ask you this maybe unlikable question, like people ask when they hire some employee. Where do you see yourself, meaning the company now, in 5 years? You've already said that in 3, 4, you want to be best in Europe. But what about 5? Does it go further?
Yeah, once we happen to be or somehow manage to become the best in Europe or one of the best in Europe, definitely we will probably have more global ambitions. Let's see. It's obviously a little bit like reading from a crystal ball. But I would say it's part of the company culture or our DNA that there is always this ambition like, okay, what else? How can we get something more? Or, so that's very likely to come, that we may have these, let's say, a little bit more global ambitions, especially now as we work with Infosys, that is clearly a global player that comes to one's mind quite naturally. That's definitely one thing. You could also think about it from the perspective of size, let's say, in terms of, again, number of people or revenue, whatever. I can think, and we had some internal discussions, things like, there may be thousands of us, maybe even more than that. So definitely much more than today. And then there is, again, this balance, like, are we still like a family company or are we actually a corporation, So that's a tricky one. So one needs to be very careful about that. We don't have any like well-defined specific vision, let's say, for 5 years or ambition, but I think it will go along these lines.
We've been already talking about that there's many people working for entire GuideVision and all the branches, but do you know the exact number or around how many people work for you?
It keeps changing all the time. We would have to ask our HR colleagues. I don't know the exact, but it's around 300 plus, something over 300 people.
And we've been talking about still growing and catching up. So do you see this growing part of the company in the future that is still going to get bigger and bigger?
Definitely yes. Definitely yes. I mean, actually right now we are just in the phase of planning these, let's say, potential options of how we grow and where we grow. Do we recruit people here or do we recruit people in some other country? So definitely yes. Right now, back to my previous answer related to the Indian branch, we'll probably focus a lot on growing the, I would say, critical mass over there. Because you need to start somewhere, so you start with few people, of course, but that is not what we want. We really want to have at least higher tens of people, if not lower hundreds of people over there. That may take us 2 years, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, we will see. But that's definitely going to be the area where we will grow the fastest. But that does not mean we can completely, let's say, give up on taking care of what we have here in Europe and evolving the European footprint. Because that is important, because there is this proximity to the customer. So we'll definitely keep growing also here. Especially, I think we need to focus on the areas where we need the close customer proximity. So if I go back to the example of the Swedish branch, there's definitely one which is now like very, very small. And we may need like a few more people over there because the Swedish, and not just Swedish, but overall Nordic market is quite big. And it's also very attractive from the perspective of, let's say, the match of the expectations of the Nordic customers with what we as GuideVision can do. Because we all know, like, Volvo and other Swedish company, quality is really the king there. Quality is the king here as well. So there is a good match. So definitely we'll focus also on making sure we have enough capacities, enough, colleagues over there in Nordics.
And what about the challenges that company needs to face when growing? I know you've been talking about the systems catching up, but is there anything else when the company grows? Because I know you don't want to become the corporate. Yeah. The corporate is not a good word here in GuideVision. So what other challenges does the company have?
You just answered the question. Oh. I mean, yes, it's this process thing, this catch-up game I mentioned, a lot of other things which are maybe less important or definitely manageable, but this culture thing is a big one. Because we really want to continue somehow having a different culture than just a regular corporate. I mentioned before, like, things like politics, that is happening in the corporates, in the large companies. We don't want any of that. The fact that people don't know each other well enough. Again, talking about friends at, the workplace. And so, again, we'd like to continue that somehow, make sure people know each other very well, can work very nicely as a team. And it will be increasingly difficult as the company will keep growing. And as, of course, I don't think any of us is naive. One day, if we grow too much, we may lose all of that. But we'll do our best to maintain. And I have like examples from my own like professional past. The first company I worked for was a German company startup. I joined when it was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years on the market, and there were like 300-400 people. When I was leaving the company 7 years later, there were like 2,500 of people. And there was still this culture of like, we know each other, we are friends, we are family, we are not a corporation, we just focus on getting things done, not on some processes or even hiding behind processes and things like that. So they managed very well. It was not easy, but it is possible. And I'd like us to somehow do something similar like that.
We've been talking about the company a lot, so now let's talk about you more as the CEO, as the head of the entire company. How does your day look like? If we say you wake up, what do you do? What time do you wake up? How does the day start and how does it continue?
I wake up when I wake up, usually somewhere between 7 and 8 in the morning. I don't use alarm clock. From the business point of view, it's about looking at, okay, what's ahead, what's on the schedule for today or maybe for this week, Do I know what it is? Does it make sense? What are the priorities? Am I ready for that? So it's a lot about like planning the day or planning the week or longer. And then I come here, hopefully ready. And then I'm just trying my best to, make all those things happen or do whatever needs to be done in the most professional way, depending, on my, let's say, shape at that day, but the best I can at that point in time. If you look at it from the content point of view, there are like 3 main areas. One is the customer, so interactions with the customers, meeting, negotiations, sales meeting, whatever. The second area is definitely more like inward looking, like into the company, into the team. Is everything running as it should? Are the people happy? Have their, knowledge, tools, whatever they need for them to do their job? So is everything running fine? Are we delivering the project, etc.? So that's the internal view. And the third one, very important one, is the view from the owner's perspective. So obviously, I do have regular interactions, in the past with these founders of the company, now with Infosys as the mother company, on various topics. For example, now, last few weeks, we spent a lot of time talking about the future plans and the budgets and the financial plans, and getting those things clarified, discussed, approved, etc. takes time. And probably, one of the key aspects is how do you balance these 3 different perspectives? Because sometimes they're like contradictory, right? And it's like, taking 3 children. One says, I want this way, and the other one says, I want the other way, and the third one says, I'm not going anywhere, and I want to have an ice cream. And you need to find some consensus and make sure the company somehow manages to satisfy the needs of all these 3 different perspectives in a way that is, let's say, kind of win-win-win for all of it, right? All the stakeholders that are involved, for the employees, for the customers, for the owners, for us as people personally, so that we are happy. It's kind of constant balancing of all these things. If you're doing that all day, in the evening, you have 2 options, fall down and feel like half dead, or try to relax somehow actively. So I'm trying to actively relax, do some sports, spend your time with family, go out with your wife, whatever suits that particular time. But I'm just trying not to really come home and say, now I'm dead, because that would not recharge the batteries. And recharging the batteries is extremely important, because the next day comes few hours later. You wake up again and you have to do the same thing again.
So do you think this balancing between these 3 points is the most challenging things for the CEO, or what is the biggest challenge? Is there something bigger than this, what you described? Or is there different ones?
I can hardly say. I can only say from my personal perspective. If you ask a different person, you'll probably get a very different answer.
But for you?
For me, sometimes the customer interaction, that's the difficult one, because there is always this, of course, I want, as well as all my colleagues, do the best for the customers. But you realize it is not going to be easy, and it would be very easy to overpromise and then underdeliver. So one needs to keep the right balance and make sure that on one hand we do not overpromise and underdeliver, we keep it, but at the same time we don't say no to everything. So finding the right balance there, it's not easy. And then taking this one and balancing it with the other 2. Yeah. So this balancing is, you're right. I think that's the most challenging part. And there is no book that would tell you how to do that, because it's very personal. It has a lot to do with your own energy levels, your priorities, of course, also your knowledge, experience. But that's the easier part. You can always read it, but the rest is, you can only gain it through experience. So I keep learning.
And what about the relationships here in the company? Because I know everybody is friendly, you're trying to keep it as a family, but isn't that hard for you, being a CEO, being the boss, the people, you need to have some respect. So how is it here? Do you keep it like boss-employee relationship, or are you trying to be more friendly?
Naturally, I would like to be friend with everyone. It's probably human nature. That is not possible for various reasons. Of course, some of the people may not want to be friends with me, and that's perfectly okay. I respect that. And also, there might be situations where actually one needs to really differentiate. Now I'm acting in my role, being responsible for certain business aspects or for the company, its results, whatever. And now I'm acting as a friend to someone, and these two can sometimes be in conflict. So again, we are talking about balancing some, two opposite views. And what is very important, or what helps me when it comes to these things, is the long-term view. So when it comes back to friendship, yes, there are people here that I would call friends. Hopefully they would call me friends. I want them to be all friends, and trying to support it as much as possible, make sure the company gives them whatever is needed to make sure they feel like I'm here between friends. But it's not possible to really be friend with everyone. It wouldn't work. I don't believe it would work. So because I'm not trying to overdo it.
Wouldn't be the boundaries then?
There wouldn't be the boundaries, yes. And even though the boundaries are not personally important for me, some people would say, you need to respect the hierarchy. We are here actually trying to say there is no hierarchy. Of course there is, but we are not acting as if there was one, or trying not to act like that. But yeah, there are situations when you just have to admit that this is a reality and you have to act according to that. So then it's difficult to be friends.
So from all these answers you're telling me about yourself, it sounds like balance about relationships, what the company wants. It's like something you need to be good at. That's the biggest strength you have, the balancing stuff?
I guess so, yes. And then the question is, what is it that you're balancing? So there are some of these things I've mentioned already. One I haven't mentioned yet is, say, short-term versus long-term view. Many times it would be very easy to say we do something now because it brings us some benefit now, or it's easier now, or whatever. But then you have to think, okay, but what if we do this? What will that mean in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years? And then sometimes you find, there is a conflict. And then again, you're balancing again. So yes, balancing from the perspective of time, perspective of what we do, perspective of how people interact with each other, etc. Yes. Or facilitating such a balance for the colleagues, because I think the most important role of every leader is make sure people can do their job properly. It's kind of like we are serving our people so that they can do their job. So I'm also finding out many times I'm the one who's trying to find a balance between various people in the company, make sure they can actually work together towards a common goal. Whether you call it a facilitation or something else, or helping setting the right priorities, whatever, it depends. But it's, again, some sort of act of balancing the team.
Sounds very hard. So from your point of view, do you think you're doing a good job? Are you a good CEO?
Ask my colleagues. I don't know. I have many doubts. I think I could do many things better than I'm doing today. So as I mentioned before, I'm trying to learn every day, whenever possible. I'm sure there is some people around who, if you just put them in my job, would do it 10 times better. But I'm just trying my best. And as long as, again, somehow it works for the people, for the company, it works for the customers, works for the owners, and I still maintain some meaningful win-win-win balance for all these three, I'm probably not doing too bad a job to be replaced. So ask my colleagues.
We will try. Now on a more personal level, because I know you have more branches around the Europe. There is many people. You as a CEO, I believe you know all of them, or at least some of them. Is there any person in the company right now that you like the most? Who is it? Except yourself, of course.
No, that would not be myself for sure. I'm trying to know them, but the more we are, the more difficult it is, definitely. So I certainly do not know all of them, which is a pity, but that's a fact. Yes, there are people who you work with on a daily basis. There are people who you just meet once a year or twice a year on a, I don't know, Christmas party or something. There is no favorite person, colleague, who would I say, I like this one best. I cannot give you any name because there is no one like that. What I do like is that, and it's really probably one of the most important things for me personally, if I look at the colleagues, at all those 300 plus people, yes, there will always be some exceptions, but I cannot think of anyone who I would say, well, this guy or lady is really bad or doing a bad job or is not good, like personally, someone I would personally have a trouble with or anything like that. Actually, I think we have great people. I love the people here. And from that perspective, I like all because we all have, including myself, right? We all have our strengths and weaknesses. There are points where we are really excelling at, like much better than anyone else. And then there are things where, we are not so good, right? And it's again about, putting it all together in a way that we benefit from the strong, let's say, characteristics of our personalities and do not really lose much or do not create too much damage from the negative ones. We all of us have some negatives. But I do like that there is really every single person in this company has some strength, and it's really like a big strength. There are like excellent people here, excellent people. It's not like a little bit above average, it's way above average. So in a way, back to your question, probably all of them.
So overall, it looks like you're very proud
of the
what
team
you have achieved.
Yes.
Like the people in a company.
Definitely, I'm very proud of the team, and I think they can be proud of themselves because it's not my result; it's their result. It's what they've achieved. They are the ones who recruit their colleagues, right? It's not me. They are the ones who work together, educate each other, etc., and this is the result of their own work.
That's right. You're just balancing it.
I'm just balancing it, yes. So maybe I'm finding the right balance, but I think they are all doing a fantastic job.
Okay. And last but not least, do you like movies?
Yeah, sure.
Do you watch movies? Okay. So if you could think about one actor from any country around the world who would become the face of your company, who would that be for you? I know it's hard, but maybe some of the favorite actor you have. Or actress, of course.
Yeah. It's a very hard question. Going back to what most of us here, really value or where we come from, it's about some geekiness, some technical knowledge. Sometimes maybe we are even a bit weird. So someone like, who was the actor playing the famous Sheldon role, right? Jim Pearson, something like that. That would probably be a good face. I hope if the colleagues are listening to this or watching this, there will not be many saying, like, this is total bullshit. Hopefully this is one of the potential good examples what the actor would be. Yes.
That's true. I can see him in that position. Okay, thank you very much for coming and talking to me.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.